Hey, and welcome to Dietitian Against Diets podcast. I have a great guest with me here in St. Louis, gentleman by the name of Matt Lebon. He's over Custom Foodscaping, a very unique company, and how they utilize their services and what they do with the community for St. Louis. Now, as we're going into that interview, I want to give some shout outs to some of the companies that are responsible for making this podcast possible. So one in particular is one of my major partners is Midwest Dairy. They have a campaign out now called Undeniably Dairy. And the question is, what does Undeniably Dairy mean? Or actually, what is it about? It's basically a campaign utilized to connect the farmer with the consumers to help you understand what's going on behind the scenes before you get your dairy products. So before you get your milk, before you get your cottage cheese, before you get your Greek yogurt, understanding the dairy process and how to take care of their cows, how to make sure that you're getting top A1 service and nutrients from your foods. So want to know more about them, go to dairygood.org. You will get some more insight on the farmer stories. You can get even things like recipes that are fun, and you'll get some more research-based evidence as to why dairy is such an important and nourishment food. Go to midwestdairy.com to get more information. Also follow them on Instagram at Midwest Dairy. Speaking of certified and organic products, as far as being healthy, there's a company here in St. Louis called Banner Road Granola. They are a company uniquely made to create granolas that are going against the grain of the older way that we have seen granola. We've seen granola covered with chocolate, covered with cinnamon and sugar. Not saying that's a bad thing, but let's start looking at granola in a different way. So one of their biggest things about their flavors is they come with unique savory flavors that will tickle your taste buds, give you a different way to enjoy granola, and you actually find ways you can put it on other meals besides just a breakfast. So go to their website at bannerroad.com. You will see the varieties of different types of granolas that they have and how they are created with incorporating them in their recipes. Or follow them also on Banner Road on Instagram. I look forward for you guys hearing a great conversation with Matt Lebon. Well, welcome to another episode of the Dietitian Against Diets. I have here with me Matt Lebon. Let me give you a quick synopsis about who this guy is, and then I'm going to give him the mic. I would first start off saying that Matt, outside of what he does for a living, he has believed in this podcast show. He's one of the first partners. So I do appreciate you being on board before it even kind of got started. But what Matt does specifically and why I reached out to him and actually could not wait for him to come to the podcast show, he has a unique company. He is one of the founders of Custom Foodscaping, and we will definitely get into more detail about what that means. He's originally from St. Louis and has been in the industry for a little bit over 10 years in the farming and gardening industry. He is really passionate about what he's done, what he does. He has worked on farms from Israel all the way to New York. I mean, he goes across the country, and it's a reason why he is so passionate about what he does. What he does here in St. Louis, he has just found a way to just integrate his passion and his skill set into the city of St. Louis. So I know, again, everyone has a why reason as to why they do those things, and I'm sure that's going to be the biggest question for you. So, Matt, I do, again, appreciate you being a part of this podcast and welcome you to the show.
Well, thank you so much.
Yes,
this feels so fun to be here.
And again, it's like putting face to name because Matt is one of our supporters, and I've talked over the phone with you, but again, I would say your personality from what I've seen on the media, along with the conversation, it all matches, it all comes together.
Good.
Good stuff. So, as I was kind of giving a little bit of insight about some of the things you do, kind of elaborate a little bit more and just, for you to decide to create this company that helps people to build gardens that are edible, that's kind of a new thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that came from certain things in your life that kind of brought this full circle. So, I would love to kind of hear your story and what's behind Custom Foodscaping.
Yeah. Oh, man, there's so many facets to that story potentially.
Yeah.
But I'll try to weave together a little bit of a story that makes sense. A big part of my journey to here took place while I was in Paraguay as a Peace Corps volunteer.
Okay.
So I was really fascinated with, travel and agriculture, and I ended up as a Peace Corps volunteer in Paraguay, where I spent 2 years living amongst the same rural farming community. And living amongst an agricultural community where literally every one of my neighbors was a farmer was a complete shift for me. I was a suburban kid here in St. Louis, and had never really like known a farmer even. And then all my neighbors were all of a sudden these small scale farmers who knew how to grow all their own food, build their own homes. They all had, chickens and different livestock. They all knew how to go harvest, material from their more wild areas and build things that they needed. And I was just like,
they're like self-sufficient.
Oh my gosh, right? I couldn't believe like they had all these skills. I knew how to do none of them, right? And I was like, wow, I need to skill up. This is clearly like showing some of the things I haven't learned. Clearly, like I'm here as this Peace Corps volunteer. I know nothing compared to these people.
Yes.
So much. And everybody's got all this food growing around them. Not just the fields, but like the fruit trees specifically were so amazing and fascinating to me that no matter how humble the home, like there's fruit trees around every house. And that just struck me as like such abundance, because it wouldn't be just like 5 little tiny fruits here. We're talking like mangoes and, grapefruits and oranges and papayas like falling out of the sky constantly.
They had everything they needed in their backyard.
Yeah, I mean, they had a lot of it. They had the baseline, which is like grow food where you live. If you've got this green space around your dwelling, instead of seeing it as some energy suck that where you have to manage it because somebody's looking on and you got to maintain it, like grow something that is going to nourish you. So that's kind of like where the story started, where I had that first aha moment of, well, I didn't think about my landscape growing up like that at all.
Just never know how things happen,
Yeah.
like where ideas come from. Your goal of going with the Peace Corps had nothing to do with the farming or anything like that. I'm assuming, right?
Well, it was ironic. So I had studied business in college, and so part of the business sector of Paraguay was about working with rural farming cooperatives.
Okay.
So a lot of my neighbors were part of the sugarcane cooperative, and so I was tasked with working with those folks within the cooperative setting, which is something I could make sense more of, like from a business perspective. And but then the actual growing of the food and gardening and things like that was something I had no experience with. So that was completely that is what put me on the path that I was on today, which ultimately led to, a lot of the different farms that I ended up working on throughout the many years after the Peace Corps.
So after the Peace Corps, were you basically voluntarily going to some of these farms now that you had kind of gotten a bug for farming?
Many of them I was like working on, just kind of like as a farm hand or as an apprentice. Apprenticing is a really common thing within the farming world, within the small farming world, like where people are still using their hands.
Okay.
So that is kind of a cool aspect of farming that's still alive, this idea of working under mentor farmers and being in an intentional hands-on learning space. So I did like learning experience that would help kind of give me some of the professional skills I needed.
I mean, at that point, did you decide this is what I want to do? I want to go into farm, or are you still kind of like on the fence with the business? And
super on the fence, because I'm trying to figure out like, well, what's the career path here? Because if you start talking to small farmers, they don't have an easy go of it. And a lot of the ones that are getting by okay had a land situation that was accessible to them, through family or friends or something like that. But buying land is such a huge undertaking, and moving out to the country kind of thing was a whole life. Yeah, that would be a huge shift. So trying to figure out like, well, where do I fit into all this? And that's kind of what led me to Ferguson and Earth Dance.
Okay.
Where there's a 14-acre farm school, and so Earth Dance has got all these, farming programs teaching people about how to grow food, and I love education, so that was kind of like, that was my first job here in St. Louis that got me connected into this community and got me educating and working on a farm every day.
Yeah. So what made you want to bring it back to St. Louis?
It was funny. I didn't think I was going to come back to St. Louis, and then I had been living in New York. I did part of this journey was being an urban farmer for a few years in the New York City, Brooklyn area.
Okay.
And I knew that wasn't sustainable because it's way too expensive to be a poor urban farmer there. But I didn't know, I thought my next step was going to be out of the city. And then I came home and I had some health issues that I was dealing with, and so I was like kind of exploring what's going on here,
Okay.
while I was getting some support from my parents. And then I came across Earth Dance, and I met some people, like who showed me that this city is just a complete hidden gem. Like I was so ignorant to just thinking that it was just kind of my suburban upbringing is what the city had to offer, and then I came to realize this is just like the dream spot for urban farming because there's tons of space. The cost of living is so affordable, and there's so much work to be done. There's the need is so high here for us to gain exposure to where healthy food comes from. So it just
Yes,
seemed
that
like
is
the
so
perfect
true.
confluence of factors.
Well, I mean, seems like that's what's the deal breaker. I mean, from the different like reasons and recognizing the amount of space that's here, the affordability, the need. I mean, it just made perfect sense.
Yeah, it really did.
Well, it's good to know like that's what brought you back. Because a lot of times you don't. Everyone has intentions of why they're deciding to create a business anywhere, but you kind of brought it back home. So I'm sure a little bit of that just bringing homage back to St. Louis, to the place you grew up, or even a way of you wanting to make it a better place.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay, so now that has happened. You worked at, and I actually know the farmers, the husband and wife, at Earth Dance.
Oh, wonderful.
Great couple. And so I know kind of like what they're all about, and I even like brought some of my, told some of my church youth groups about the program so they can take the kids down there and things like
Huge.
that. So I know they're great people. But so now you have weeded off, and how long has custom foodscaping been around, and what's the concept behind that?
Yeah. So we're entering into our third season here, and so we're still a young company. Our whole idea is summed up, I think, with our tagline best, which is "Have your landscape and eat it too." And basically, we understand very well this idea of landscaping, right? It's everywhere around us. It's the grass that we mow. It's all the bushes and trees that we manage outside of all the buildings and homes that we interact with every single day. And so we're working on foodscaping those spaces, and the idea that instead of having them, like I mentioned in Paraguay, instead of having these spaces be a space that we have to manage and not get anything out of, if we're going to put all this time and energy into it, let's grow food in those spaces
Makes
and
sense.
choose plants that are beautiful and ultimately lead people to a place where they can have these kind of magical food moments in the everyday places that they work, live, and play, congregate, all that good stuff.
So what's a magical food moment?
Oh my
I
gosh.
can't wait to hear this.
Are you kidding? I live in the magical food moment world. There's what's a magical food moment? Well, I think that the one that just came to mind was I was giving a tour once at Earth Dance to some
Okay.
kids, and I made them try this herb lemon balm, right? Which is this, kind of ground cover perennial herb, and it's so fragrant of lemon, and you can use it in tea
Okay.
primarily. So I had the kids all, rub the leaves and smell it and, chew on it a little bit, and they all are like, they were freaking out, but they were like, this smells like, our the like cleaning product, the lemon zest cleaning product that we are like use in our house, right? And I said, or does your lemon zest cleaning product smell like lemon balm? And then they're like, oh yeah. Like that moment where they realize like what is real, what is primal, what comes from the earth. It's the lemon balm plant that gives rise to these things, to this lemon scented product. That's where it all starts. And I think that, you see in that moment, you see kids like make that connection.
Yes.
That would be a magical food moment for me.
I get it. Because again, you're connecting people to the food.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in our society, especially the urban society, actually any society mostly, we don't connect. We just, it's a price point and it's a convenience point. And that's how we make our decision, versus, I had a guy, gentleman come in that owns a healthy food restaurant, and he says people don't respect food. And what he means by that, he's coming from the chef perspective, because he's the one gathering the fresh fruits and vegetables. He's the one that's washing them, cutting them up, and providing them in the meals. And then he said people just demolish it without taking time to really recognize what they're eating and the value of it. So like I completely can connect with what you're saying, how like helping people to just take a moment and just recognize the beauty and we, how we are so aligned with what we put in our body and where it's coming from, So that's now I know it's a magical food moment.
Yeah.
And that's just one of them.
Yeah, that wasn't even so much of a food one, but it's like,
But
it's all the same idea.
Yeah, I mean, I would not have thought about that, and especially being a kid. I mean, that planted a seed,
I hope.
And so that's how it works with the youth.
Yeah.
So another question I wanted to ask you is, a lot of times, if you're not such as yourself, you're not used to creating and gardening in an urban environment. So like, how do you, first of all, help to allow people to recognize it's okay, because it's kind of taboo still, expose them to it, and then help them to kind of stair step to where they're comfortable with starting somewhere to where it can just turn into they end up doing it on a higher level. So how do you kind of start from ground zero with a person or with a company, client, however it is within your business?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question. I think that there's this like quote that's kind of eluding me, but it's basically like, show it, don't say it. Kind of this idea that when you demonstrate something, it's so much more powerful than telling them how to do it. So my favorite thing is to create educational opportunities that bring somebody to, actually have a tactile experience with a garden plant or a fruit or a vegetable. So, I think the way to do that is if you're showing up to a meeting per se, and it's in a place where there is no, farm or garden, bring some of that lemon balm, plant, bring some of the funky fruits that we plant, make a pot of chocolate mint tea. And then create that sense of curiosity. That's where it all has to start.
Okay.
I think before we even think about some of the practical logistics, we need people to be like really excited about the possibilities. And then, we do different like tours and classes and things like that. Several times a year we host like free tours at our home base, Food Forest that we call it.
And where is that located?
That's in South City, right by Tower Grove Park.
Okay. Really? Mm-hmm. Where exactly?
It is right by the Royale.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, it's right around. It's not far.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Super close.
So that's where you host some of your workshops.
Yep. And then we teach lots of classes throughout the year, and I think that those moments, those are opportunities to like show people this is what you could grow. Like this is just a small city yard, right? Here's what's possible. And then that really helps people to paint the idea, I think, of what they could be doing in their yard.
Yeah. And again, I just think that when you think city, you think urban, the last thing, when you think about gardens, you think, oh, I have to have a house with a big yard so I can create this multitude, which is great. But how can you work within your own space? And I think allowing people to know that's possible, I think that helps to encourage them to, start with something within your own space. I think the whole point of it is learning how to take advantage of the land you have and make it turn over in a way that you're benefiting from it,
For sure.
Teach people that's possible. I think it also can help solve, there is within St. Louis, so you said something about the need. So one thing I recognize, I've been doing a lot more work in the city, there is a need when it comes to accessibility to food.
Oh, yeah.
more specifically healthy food. And so, like, I'm assuming like that's one of the pillars that you're targeting when it comes to this particular company.
Absolutely. I mean, we have been, that, as you know, is such a multifaceted, challenging issue. And, we don't pretend to be able to solve all those
Yes.
issues. One of the huge reasons that custom foodscaping was started was because so many of the food justice activists who are working within the space of getting healthy food into the spaces where it currently isn't being found accessibly,
Uh-huh.
um, they have the organizational levers are there, the fire and the passion for people to like help create the change we need is all there, but what's lacking is the actual food growing expertise. So if all these people are coming together saying we need healthy food, here in the city, we need to change healthy eating habits. Okay, follow that the next level. Well, if we need to change healthy eating habits, how do we do that? We need to get these plants, these good healthy foods, into the hands and mouths of the people who we want eating that stuff and buying these foods. Okay, well, where's that food going to come from? Well, there's nothing here.
It's crickets.
Okay, so we need to create this. We need to create the opportunity for food to be accessible, grown where people live, so that kids are walking down the street and they run into an apple tree, and they can see that, oh, this is how apples grow. They don't have to be, perfect and waxy like the grocery store to still be delicious. We want, people walking down the street and their cousin or neighbor, is tending to a garden and they say, hey, we're digging carrots. Come try a carrot, and somebody from their neighborhood has them eat a carrot right out of the ground and wash it off themselves.
Mm-hmm.
We need the food growing space for that moment to happen, because as long as everything just shows up on a truck,
There's still the disconnect. Yeah.
yep, there's the disconnect. And so I think that for people to really embrace that the healthy eating lifestyle change, you need to have some kind of profound experience that moves you away from the bag of chips to the fresh vegetable. How do we create that profound experience? I think that creating foodscapes within the city is one of the
Ways.
best options we have
Yes.
for doing that.
Yes.
So
So I mean, obviously, you see there is a path to a way, but you see where you fit in
right,
to that path. So I totally get it. I mean, as a dietitian, like I'm all about educating and teaching people and show them how to utilize foods in a variety of ways. But what good is it if they don't have the resources or even know how to produce the resources? I think when it comes to these particular cohorts or organizations, it's about creating the opportunity, but it's also about empowering people to do it, consumers or whomever it is that you're working with, because you can create it and just say, here you go. I'm making sure I'm satisfying your need, but I'm not empowering you on how to do it yourself. So then there is a level of that's where the appreciation is lacking, because if someone just gives you something versus you working and cultivating and molding and it's a product that you created,
yep,
totally different.
yep,
So how can you help to empower people? And that's by hands-on, finding a space, creating hands-on experience, and continuing to educate them on how to do it themselves. And to me, like that's essentially what I do within my profession. It sounds like that's really what custom foodscaping is about. I think the biggest thing is that breaking down the walls of I can do it, I can really do it. Because if you're not taught this, we wasn't taught this in school. What?
So far from it.
Like we were never taught this. And again, everything is always multiple reasons as to why things are the way they are. It's not one big reason, But even though we still have this opportunity now with our passion and what we find, there is a need to just do our best to be a part of filling the gap. And I think, when you had mentioned some of the things you were mentioning, you're also talking about community in that situation.
Oh my God.
I mean,
yeah.
that's a part of it.
It's huge.
You want to cultivate a community, and I think community means support, and support means growth, and growth means change. I mean, it all kind of like dominoes across the board. So it seems like that your full circle concept, you had said. Now remember, before you went to do your Peace Corp, You had no idea how to utilize any type of no farming skills.
Right.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I grew up in a suburban. I can't even grow basil successfully. I'll put it like that. But I'm learning, right? But if
Yep.
you're not taught that, then you don't. But I think what I hear, you started off in the urban community. You went somewhere where it's the opposite. People live off some land and they grow it, and you said bountiful. So you actually found a way to pay it forward because you're bringing it back to the urban environment to teach the citizens in the community how to live in abundance, or there's a possibility there's an abundance. I'm not sure if you recognize that you're just kind of bringing homage to your own personal experience of not having that opportunity. You
Yeah.
know? So if it was a perfect world for you, how would you want to see Foodscaping grow? Like into what areas, or to what length of time, into like, I mean,
Yeah.
you don't ever want to overwhelm yourself, but you're not just here just to satisfy one community. Like it would be nice to have this overflow into other areas.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, I think if there was one aspect of the vision that I could focus in on, it would be at schools. That's just where there's so much potential people power. There's so much space usually available to do foodscape plantings. And there's so many hungry people every day who need food, who are all coming to one central location. So, a lot of the things that that I'm talking about with people, especially as it relates to schools, is the idea of ditching the vegetable garden.
Okay.
Yeah, so many people.
You may have some backlash with that.
Yeah, right? Well, if you've been a part of a school vegetable garden, then you know how hard it is. Not just for 1 or 2 years, but for 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years to keep that energy going, to do that successfully. Get the seeds together, get the soil, get the compost, pull the weeds, get the harvest distributed. It's a lot. And it happens primarily over the summer when kids are not around and when people are traveling so much. So, foodscaping, for our business especially, is really rooted in perennial crops.
Okay.
Yep. So when you think about landscaping, look around when we walk outside this building. It's all trees, shrubs, grasses, herbaceous, perennial plants. Perennial meaning it comes back every year. They're not going and replanting that dogwood tree every year. No, you plant a dogwood tree and then you just see it get big and last for 20, 30, 40 years, right? Let's build that kind of resilience into our food system. Okay, so what does that look like in a school? Well, it looks like, first of all, making sure that the food is abundant when kids are in school. So that means April, May, and then it means September, October primarily. That's when we can be harvesting from the land. So in the fall, it means fruit trees. I mean, the simple idea of planting things like apples and pears, which bear in the fall, and connect kids to the seasons, and then integrating some of our important native fruits like pawpaws and persimmons into that equation. That way, let's get an effort to plant trees that are going to live for decades so that kids have the same experience of being outside, harvesting from the land, encouraged to eat something that isn't, clean and shiny, and, just have that outdoor experience with food, and watch something grow and get tied to the seasons, but without the huge energy effort required to get that vegetable garden planted year after year, not just year after year, season after season. I mean, a vegetable garden bed gets planted and harvested from several times sometimes in a single year. And there's so much organization that goes into that.
I'm glad you made that distinction, because as a listener or as a viewer, you think custom foodscaping, you're thinking just making a vegetable garden that has different colors in it.
Oh,
So
interesting.
you made the clarification, understanding what is the idea behind the types of plants that you guys are planting.
Yeah.
And that really makes sense because it takes the footwork. The vegetable garden, I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great intentions. I mean, it's, again, I'm glad that someone's bringing some acknowledgement to helping kids learn how to grow and appreciate food. But if you take it a step further, over time, we've learned the pros and cons to it, and so you coming alongside of it and creating that opportunity that's more, like, say, on a perennial basis. I mean, and it's different. It's a totally different concept. And so I think that's important too for, when you're talking to the schools, or you're talking to the restaurants, like, what is, you're not just helping them to grow vegetables in their backyard.
No.
You know, they can have a garden, keep that if that's their choice, but you're looking at something that's more long-standing and that's going to allow to take the work out of it, but keeps coming every year.
Yeah. I like to think of it as an investment. You know, we invest our time with everything that we do, right? And we want ideally to see, you know, compound returns. So if we plant, you know, a vegetable seed, a lot of times we have to kind of start that process over. We're like back in the same spot where we were before. But when we plant trees and shrubs and even like, you know, perennials, like I was going to get to the spring in a school, like asparagus, for example, an incredible long-lived perennial vegetable. Well, then we invest our effort into getting the soil right, buying the plant material, and then we just need to care for something that's going to provide bounty for literally like 30 years to come, which is to me just is like the most exciting
When
idea.
you put it like that, it puts perspective on it, you know. I think that's great. Have you ever considered when you go to different, let's say custom foodscaping gets like embedded into other parts of the country. So I guess it's just really recognizing what their seasons are, what are their biggest, you know, types of growth, and just so will be some tweaks, you know, if you were to like take it somewhere else.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I think about as far as taking it somewhere else, what I'd love to take somewhere else is just the knowledge more than the business. You know, I think what gets me really excited is like education and teaching and training. And I would love for, you know, in 5 to 10 years for us to be able to say, hey, we've learned X, Y, and Z. We've figured out, you know, so many different things from all the mistakes we've made. How can we help grow the foodscaping movement? How can we be kind of like movement builders as opposed to kind of like, you know, franchisers?
Yeah.
Because the truth is that every city in America right now like has people who are excited about foodscaping already, you know, and they're doing the good work in their own communities. And so I would love to find a way to kind of just, you know, empower them and share skills and just, you know, rise the sea level of foodscaping overall.
I like that. Yeah. So I got a question for you, Matt. A personal question. So
Yeah.
obviously you're embedded into just the farming and the gardening, and I know like your lens is on, you know, your appreciation for everything that you grow. You know, how has that connected you to like just your health and like what it represents to you?
Man, I think it's been, well, it has been so connecting. I think that when you grow your own food and you feel, it's like you literally, in my experience, feel the nutrients, feel the goodness, feel the flavor, smell the smells. It just makes everything else pale so much more in comparison. You know, so then it's like, why would I want, you know, the stuff that is just like factory farm junk, you know, just feels a lot less appealing. But we first have to understand like what good food really tastes and looks and smells like.
Yeah, that's a big part. Again, there's you're. I just feel like the world or these times people are just they're separated as far as just brainwashed. They don't know like the taste of just a tomato on its own or what broccoli, fresh grown broccoli tastes like versus something that was done on a conventional large farm or something that's covered with some sort of sauce, you know, like tasting everything from its texture to, I mean, every part of it. I think that for me, like connecting, like, you know, I put it this way, like, I actually that question specifically because you are connecting to something that's creating you. When I say creating you, what you're putting in your body is what's creating your body.
Absolutely.
So taking the time, but you're taking a step further to where you're watching it being created. You're creating it, and then you're feeding yourself, which is creating you. You know, and so I think you know, I know it sounds kind of hokey dokey for some people, but to me, like those are my lenses. You know, that's why I choose certain foods, and I don't choose certain foods because I look at it as what I'm putting in my body is what's creating this body or what's slowing this body down, you know? And so I'm assuming like being in the moment every step of the way, you know, you're seeing from the seed to when it's on the table, that's another layer, you know. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure like you are particular about certain tastes and certain foods and how it's grown and where it's grown and who's growing it. I think that's important because
Mm-hmm.
that's just the part. That's just who you are.
Yeah.
All because you went down to a peace, volunteered in the Peace Corps.
Yeah. And the funny thing about that makes me think of is how when you have the local homegrown food is how it's so much easier to get people to make healthy food choices because like it just tastes a lot better.
Hmm.
So make that whole diet connection. It's like, well, you don't actually know what a tomato looks like or tastes like
Hmm.
because it was picked green and force ripened in the truck.
And that's why education is so important, as far
Mm-hmm.
as what you're saying. Instead of just franchising it, educating people, because that's what's going to empower them to look past what they've been kind of like shoveled. That's what you're shoveled with. Like look past that and connect with it on their own. You know. So I
Mm-hmm.
really like just your intention behind everything that you're doing with your company. And I want more people to be able to find where you're at. 'Cause I know you say you do workshops. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you have any coming up? Is there like, I'm assuming on your website, or do you have like, what's going on right now in the
Yeah,
upcoming months?
great question. Okay, so we've got I'd have to look at my calendar a little bit, but off the top of my head, we're um, the Missouri, I think Department of Conservation is doing a native plant seminar,
Okay.
and that's like the second week of March. It's
Okay.
out. I think it's in Cape Girardeau, and so we're going to be talking about foodscaping there.
Okay.
We've got a few different talks going on, and then May 15th and 16th, we're doing what we're calling a hands-on permaculture weekend intensive. So that's going to be a lot of the people who are interested in the stuff they want to like see like how is it done, like what does an actual installation look like for you. So we're going to be doing a food forest planting. We're going to actually dig a rain garden and plant it. We're going to be demonstrating with folks, well, why are we locating our rain garden here? How does water enter? How do we manage it so
Okay.
there's no erosion? How are we going to design this polyculture of plants, this grouping of diverse plants? Why are we planting this here? We're going to learn about mushroom growing and how to inoculate mushrooms into wood chips and into logs, because I see mushrooms as a really rising part of the good healthy food movement. So we're going to give people the skills to actually learn how to do that stuff.
And where is that going to be at?
That is going to be at a school
Okay.
called the Children's Community, a micro school, and it's
Okay.
in Fenton.
Okay. Not too far.
No,
Wow.
yeah, it's really neat. It's a little 10-acre property in Fenton.
That sounds like it's going
So
to be
kind of like, yeah, South County.
a very fun weekend.
Oh yeah, I'm
Yeah.
really looking forward to it.
Yes. Well, Matt, I am I can't say it enough, how grateful I am to have you on the show. I was always interested in how this conversation is going to go, and I'm not surprised that I've learned so much. So I know if I learned a lot, even the viewers have learned a lot about some of the things that it's been in front of their face that they just never knew about, but also like why you do what you do. And it's not just about, you want to seep ideas and empower people to learn to utilize their space as best helps and connect with their land, but also connects with their health. So I'm very grateful to have you on. Before we close up, I want to make sure that if anyone is interested in learning more about your services or learning where the workshops are at, where are the spaces they can go find custom foodscaping?
Yeah, well, let me just real quick say like our services kind of just because what our main thing that we do is we design and install these food producing landscapes.
Okay.
So that's our main service, and we that can be found at our website.
And who are your target audience when you're doing
We're
it?
really targeting everywhere. I mean, we do all kinds of, we do urban and suburban residential clients.
Okay.
We're working with schools, restaurants, YMCA's,
Okay.
anywhere where there's land and people, there's going to be people there who want to engage in food production. We're interested in corporate wellness gardens. We're really want to see a hospital client come.
Wow,
That is one of,
that's
we're trying to manifest that
that'll
this
be a
year
good
because
one.
what place could be more important than a hospital to have, healthy food growing instead of just a huge grass lawn, which is what most hospital landscapes look like. So,
Very true.
we work with all those different kinds of clients. Yeah. And so, You can find us we've got our website is customfoodscaping.com.
Okay.
And we're keeping up on Instagram and Facebook as well at Custom Foodscaping.
I've seen them.
Yeah.
Really cool. Is there you said Facebook too, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, there you have it, guys. Anywhere you guys want to learn about what Matt is all about and his company, Custom Foodscaping, it's across the board, across every social media platform, and you can check him on the website. I'm sure if you give him a call, he'll answer the phone too. So, again, Matt, thank you for being on the show. For everyone out there, you know what the show is about. It's not about saying diets are bad. It's really changing the diet mentality. Expand your horizon, connect with your food, and learn to make food choices based off what you want best for yourself, not because someone tells you to. So, Rashonda Thornton, the Dietitian Against Diets. I look forward to talking with you guys next week. Have a great day. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. Very interesting, gentleman. Excited about his company, what it represents. It made me start thinking differently about how, and I'm going to use my garden and use my, my decor in my front yard and possibly transform it into something that's edible. So, shout outs to Matt and his grassrooted efforts that he's done here in St. Louis. As we're closing out, there are some other companies in St. Louis I want to recognize. One in particular is called Sarah Food. Sarah Food is a home delivery service that you can go online, select your shelf, select the type of food you want, and select what date. So you actually know who's making your foods. It's a lot differently than just going on your phone, just typing up any type of company and getting a food product. You can actually pick who you want to cook your food. So I think that's pretty personable and pretty customized. They have a great deal online right now. If you go to their website, you can use the word LOVE in all capital letters to get 20% off your first orders. I think it's like your first 3 orders. So if you are curious to how their food tastes and what type of cuisines they have, go to sarahfood.com to check it out. Also, take a look at their following on Instagram on Sarah_food. Now, I did, as you just heard about Custom Foodscaping with Matt Lebon, he's actually one of the partners here in St. Louis that's a part of this podcast. You got some information about what he does and more about who he is, but some other things that you may not know about Custom Foodscaping is that they have services anywhere from helping you to consult you in your space, to showing you how to curate and modify and change your space into more of an edible place. And they have a lot of workshops. They actually have one coming up in May that if you go to their website, you see what type of workshop it is, and you can see how you can register for it. Go to www.customfoodscaping.com to see some of the workshops, and you may find that it may give you a new hobby that you may find that you enjoy doing. Last but not least, follow them on Instagram as well at Custom Foodscaping. I hope that you guys had a great time listening and watching this particular podcast. Continue to look for more in the future. Thank you.